the show, we were talking about skunks, and we learned a lot about skunks from naturalist Terry Sprague, who's our guest today here on Senior Support. And now we're going to talk about frogs. And just before the break, I said I didn't know much about them. Our producer Ann said I should take a leap and learn more. So that's what we're going to do, eh, Terry?
That's right, and people seem to love frogs, kids especially. And for many years, I ran a program called the Marsh Monitoring Program, and we were trying to get volunteers to go out and monitor frogs because they certainly tell us a lot about the condition of our water and our wetlands because their skin is so sensitive that they readily take in any toxins that may be present.
Well, Terry, I have to say first that you're absolutely right. People love frogs. My 2.5-year-old grandson just loves frogs. And we have a bit of a wet area right by our lane, by the house here. And this time last year, when he was only a year and a half, he just loved going over there, looking for the frogs. They sit along the road and they leap in when he gets close and he watches them swim. And it's so much fun. They're fascinating, really.
Yeah, people are captivated by frogs, and like I say, we have 8 species in this area, and they come out and they call at various times of the year depending on the water temperature. And this the one in particular, the wood frog, as well as spring papers and chorus frogs, they're the earliest ones to come out because they don't really hibernate in the general sense of the word. They just well, the wood frog is the most interesting. It's a marvel actually in creation, and it's just a very fascinating story. But most frogs that we are familiar with, like leopard frogs that we find hopping across our lawns every year, they do hibernate. They go down in the water down to where it's just barely above freezing. And they go into a state of torpor and they absorb oxygen through their skin, and they emerge in the spring when the water warms up. But some of these other frogs, like the chorus frogs and spring peepers and the wood frog, they are early. They are the earliest ones to call, and they'll be calling. They call quite early in the spring and late March or April, depending on the water temperature, the air temperature. And they're the first ones that we hear, where others, like the bullfrog, they like their water at room temperature before they start to call. So, yeah, frogs are fascinating. Kids find them fascinating. And there are just so many species that we have in this area, and they're all readily identifiable by their calls. They all make different calls and different times of the year.
When you say call, you're talking about the croaking that they do.
The croaking, I can't really call it singing because it's not really a singing, but they all have different voices. Like the wood frog, for instance, it sounds like a gathering of ducks calling, very noticeable quacking noise, as opposed to a croaking noise like a leopard frog would do.
Now, that wood frog you have behind you looks like it's on a tree. Are they not in the water like the other frogs?
Not as much. No, this is a woodland, a woodland frog that I found at Vanderwater Conservation Area north of Belleville, and it was deep in the woods. It's on a log, very mossy, kind of a dampish area, and didn't surprise me to find it there. What surprised me was that I was able to approach it that closely to get a photo because, let's face it, it's not very large. It's only about the size of a person's thumb.
That's a pretty small frog.
Yeah, but they have the ability to, well, actually, it's a fascinating story if you don't mind me going through it. They don't hibernate. They allow their body to freeze completely through. They'll find some shelter, maybe under some leaves, and use that as their shelter through the winter months. And it's really a biological miracle how they survive at all. It begins with the ice filling the frog's abdominal cavity and encases the internal organs. But the ice turned white. It's very interesting to find these things in the winter because their eyes will be completely glassed over, and that's because they're frozen. They're basically frozen. The frog's liver produces large amounts of glucose, and this syrupy solution prevents the cells from freezing. for all intents and purposes, the frog appears quite dead. I have found them. You would think it was just completely dead. It was frozen solid. But, there'll be no muscle movement, no heartbeat, no breathing, absolutely nothing. But as soon as the weather warms up a little bit, the brain activates, the legs start to move, and away they'll go. And they'll do this several times in the spring as the weather dictates. They'll freeze and at night maybe, and then they'll come back to life again during the day. So that's why they're the earliest frogs to start calling in the spring.
Mm-hmm. So you say you found it in Vanderwater Conservation Area. There's lots of conservation areas. Is that where
Yes.
people go to look for frogs if they want to?
Not necessarily. We are so fortunate to have good habitat throughout the Bay of Quinte area and within the listening area. Whether it's frogs that typically are found in wetlands. We have tons of wetlands, especially in the northern part of the county. There's the Huff's Island Marsh and Saugwin Marsh and Dead Creek Marsh up at Carrying Place. And we're very fortunate. So we have a good population of frogs. And we have, good conservation areas that harbor populations of wood frogs. So you have the habitat, you're going to have a good population.
Mm-hmm.